Hi guys, this is Miss Sims. I'm going to do the second part of the Cold War notes today. Today we're going to focus in on what's known as the Korean War. And so basically what we're going to do is this is like one of the first, this is one of the big conflicts that the United States is going to be involved with, kind of against communism, that is going to fall under the Cold War. So the Korean War itself is its own war, but it kind of falls under the Cold War. So anyways, what we're going to do is we're going to get like a real quick overview of it, and then we'll go back and we'll do it like event by event. Okay, so this is a fairly short war. So anyways, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so let's start with the causes. So first off, it's important to kind of look at like where Korea is. So China is right here and Korea is off of China. If you guys remember from the notes last time, China has this revolution. I know we didn't spend a lot of time talking about it, but China has this revolution and it moves to a communist government, communist takeover with Mao Zedong. And so we're going to see that influence coming from the north into North Korea. Okay. So I want you to be careful. I don't want you to immediately say, like, okay, China is communist, the Soviet Union are communist, so they've got to be best friends. They're really not, but they at times see eye to eye. So we're going to see that the Soviet Union is going to support, in a lot of ways, the spread of communism. But the communism that is in China is a very, very, very different brand than the communism that is in the Soviet Union. Okay, and we're not going to go much deeper than that in that. Okay, so again, what ends up happening is North Korea becomes communist, and South Korea is remaining democratic. And we're going to see that the communist North is going to invade the South. Okay. And so, with that, the United States has been working on this policy that's called containment. And remember, when we see a big word like this, we want to look at, okay, what is the word that pops out to us? And it should be contain. Like we are containing this, what the United States would see as a mess. We want to contain communism so it doesn't spread any further. Okay. And so this is going to really put the United States to the test of, can they keep communism from spreading all over Asia? Because that's really what we're looking at right now. Okay. So who supports who? Really, China is going to support North Korea. The United States is going to support South Korea. And then the United Nations is kind of involved as well. Okay, and I want you to kind of look at what motivates China. This North Korea is kind of serving as a buffer zone for China, to keep China protected on this one side. Okay, so if we were to look at a map, you're going to see that the Soviet Union is on one side, and then you have some other nations, and so China is just kind of protecting itself in that way. Okay. All right, so we're gonna have to go back a little bit to kind of understand what kind of happens here. Okay, so go back in time to 1945. Japan is going to surrender in World War II. And so what happens is any areas that had been controlled by Japan, that had been occupied by Japan, is going to be split up among the Allied forces. Okay, and so really in Asia, most of that is going to go to either the Soviet Union or the United States, because those were the two that were kind of doing stuff there. So the Soviet Union is going to get control of North Korea, and then the United States is going to get control of South Korea. Okay, and I want you guys to keep in mind, this is important. Like still today, North Korea is communist and South Korea is democratic. Okay. Fast forward about 3 years. North and South Korea are going to be founded as independent countries. Okay, so now instead of like the USSR and the United States are just kind of controlling these areas, both of these governments in theory are going to step back, and these are going to become two independent nations. And the 38th parallel, this is kind of an important line to remember latitude, longitude. 38th parallel on the map, this is where the dividing line is. Okay, so I want you to remember that because that's going to be important as the war goes on about seeing like who gained territory and who lost territory. So that's kind of where we're at 1948. Okay, so now we're going to jump into the events, and it just kind of goes month by month. Okay, so June 1950. So we're 5 years out from the end of World War II as far as Japan surrendering. It has been, I believe, 4 years. No, 2 years since North Korea and South Korea have had their own country. North Korea is going to invade South Korea. So remember, North Korea communist, South Korea is democratic. The United Nations and the UN is going to send troops to help support South Korea. North Korea is going to take almost all of South Korea. If you guys look at your note sheet, so I'm going to jump over to it. Oh, where'd it go? If you guys look at your note sheet here at the bottom, it has the pictures of kind of the evolution of the offensive. Okay, so this is kind of where we started, and by September of 1950, look at how much of this is yellow. So that is all going to be communist. So they're going to take almost all of South Korea. So now North Korea is going to control the majority of the peninsula of like the whole of Korea. So remember, 38th parallel is what our starting line was. Okay, and we'll go back to over here. Okay, so September 1950, the United States and South Korea forces are going to land. So now the U.S. is going to come in and help a little bit more, land at Incheon, and North Korea forces are going to be trapped, and they're going to be forced to retreat back into North Korea. So it's almost a reversal of that. We're going to see in October, the United States is going to cross the 38th parallel and continue pushing back into North Korea. Okay, so for some people, this is controversial. So specifically, China and Russia had not really been helping the North Koreans at this point. Basically, they like are sitting back watching. But when the United States is helping and pushes past that 38th parallel, you're going to see at that point China and the Soviets are going to want to step in. Okay. And I say the Russians here, it's really technically it's the Soviets. Ethnically, they're Russian. So if you see that switch, don't worry. They're still the Soviet Union. They haven't switched back to Russia yet. But we're going to look back at this map again. Okay, so remember, this is where we started, 38th parallel. North Korea pushed, and they're going to push almost, take almost all of it. And then you're going to see the United States and the UN are going to send in troops. They're going to land at Incheon, which is right here, and they are going to push back. And whenever they pass that 38th parallel, remember, that was the starting line. That is when China and the Soviet Union say, whoa, whoa, whoa. And they are going to get involved. Whenever they get involved, now you've got both sides, North Korea and South Korea, are supported by larger, better resourced governments. Okay. So before this, if it was just North Korea and South Korea, it might have been a different story. We don't know how it would have turned out. But now you've got two other big players that are doing what we call a proxy war. So they're involved helping both sides fight this war instead of fighting each other. So the United States and the Soviet Union, or the United States and China, are not going to go to war with each other, but they're kind of playing it out in Korea. Okay. All right, let's go back to where we were at. Okay, so like I said, this is controversial. So at this point, the United States and South Korea has taken almost all of North Korea. All right, by November of that year, Chinese army is going to get involved. Really, China is nervous. They start to think, well, what if they don't stop at the North Korean Chinese border, because the United States had been involved. The United States had supported in the Chinese Revolution, had supported the other side that was fighting against communist China, fighting against Mao Zedong. His name was Kai-shek. So the United States has already showed that they are willing to fight this communism in China, and they lost last time. So a lot of Chinese the Chinese Communist Party is nervous that if the US and South Korea can get some momentum, they're just going to keep on pushing right into China, and they don't want that. So now the Chinese army is going to ante up to protect their border and to protect that buffer of North Korea. Okay, so now the United States is going to be pushed back to South Korea. All right, so let's look back. All right, this is where we started. Bam, North Korea almost takes all of the Korean peninsula. North Korea pushes them back, gets almost all the way to the border in some places, and then whenever China intervenes, they kind of go back to almost where they started this 38th parallel. So remember, that's why I said that's an important thing to look at. That's where we're kind of back at. All right, back to the notes. All right, here we are, January 1951. So we are, when did this start? This started in June. So we're about 6 months in. Seoul is going to fall to the communists. So Seoul is the capital, is South Korea's capital. So that is an important loss. But then a couple of months later in March, the United States is going to retake Seoul, and a ceasefire is going to be declared. So once South Korea kind of takes back Seoul and they kind of get back to basically where they started, a ceasefire is going to be declared. Okay, MacArthur, he was an American general in World War II, so he's a general here. He wants to keep pushing. He wants to invade China, and Truman tells him no and then fires him. MacArthur is not known for listening very well. He is a very strong-headed general, and so Truman, who is our president at the time, says no and then fires him. Again, the reason that MacArthur wants to push into China is they want to take back China and push out the communists there. The reason why Truman doesn't want to do it is they are containing. The goal is to make sure that communism doesn't spread any further than it is. And Truman is concerned that if we push back again against North Korea, the same thing is going to happen that happened a couple months earlier. China is going to get involved. And if the Soviet Union gets involved, then we're really in trouble. Okay, not to mention, it's been about 5-6 years since we've had World War II. The American people don't really want to fight another war, okay? Not to mention, this is the first war, kind of as a side note, this is the first war where the military has been integrated. So we're going to see there's going to start to be some tension at home dealing with civil rights. So African Americans are going to be fighting in real combat positions at a higher rate than they were in World War II. And they're going to start to ask questions like, if I'm risking my life for my country, why is my country not even letting me drink from a water fountain? Why is my country making me step off the sidewalk whenever a white person walks by? Why is my country treating me like a second-class citizen? Why can't I even vote for the president that can send me to my death in Korea? Okay, so these questions are starting to happen. So Truman is aware that, hey, we kind of got back to even where we started with North Korea, South Korea. Maybe we should just stop, okay? So July of 1953, so everything kind of settles out, and really most of the conflict stops fighting, but it's not going to be until July of 1953 that the armistice is going to end the Korean War. That's just kind of a peace agreement. And North Korea and South Korea is going to remain divided. It is still divided today. So if you guys remember the last time we had the Olympics, it was in South Korea, and that was the first time that North Korea and South Korea had done anything to, like, even moderately together. So they allowed North Korean athletes to participate on the South Korean team, and they walked in together as one Korea. They are two completely different countries. If you live in South Korea, your life is completely different than it is in North Korea. And that is something that has been happening for a really long time. So what they're going to establish is called the demilitarized zone, and it's going to be, it's going to be on that 38th parallel. Let's go back and see. It's going to be kind of right here. And basically what that is that's an area, let me go back to where we were. Sorry, guys. That is going to be an area that is just where it's kind of no man's land, and it's very, very, very militarized, and it's going to keep people from North Korea going to South and South Korea going to North. To be honest, there's very few people going from South Korea to North Korea. There are quite a few people that have tried to defect from North Korea to South Korea to get medical help, education, freedom, rights, just a better life in general. But most of them have been killed in that. So there really isn't any crossing even today. Okay. All right. So real quick, we've got to kind of go back to your top set of notes. Here are a couple of terms and battles that we need to kind of go back on. So Pusan is the American South Korean troops are pushed back into South Korea. So if you look back, again, this map is helpful. This is that point. So basically what they're talking about is this point when North Korea pushed almost all of South Korea. Busan, that is the name of that city. So that's kind of an important one. Okay. All right. Incheon. Back over here. This is right here. This is where the Americans and the UN troops came in to kind of help and push back North Korea out. Okay, so that is those are the two big battles, big cities that you need to know. So terms, limited war. So this is a war that there is a very specific goal, which was to contain communism, and we're going to fight to achieve that, and we are not going to go any further. This is what Truman, the President of the United States, was trying to do. He did not want to. Remember, MacArthur wanted to go all the way and push into China. He said, no, we are fighting a limited war. We have a very specific goal, and we are going to do that. Basically, what they're doing is trying to keep from fighting another big, long, drawn-out war. Because again, the American people don't want to fight another war. They just got out of a really bad war a couple of years ago. So that was another term, limited war, that's important. Okay, people that are important. We already talked about General MacArthur. Remember, he was a World War II general. He's going to serve as the general. He's going to lead the U.S. forces, and he's going to end up being fired by Truman because he's going to criticize Truman's decision to do this limited war to kind of stop at the 38th parallel when the South Korea and the U.S. gained back the South Korean capital of Seoul, basically saying we're not going to push into China. Okay, so and then the treaties. So the armistice is signed at the 38th parallel. Remember, we said that was that was basically, if you look, that's where we started. That's where we're going to end up. Okay. So, and that is going to become the permanent border between North and South Korea. And the thing that's important, a result of this is going to expand the Cold War into Asia, and the U.S. is going to become involved to the point of using their military. Okay, and we're going to see that this is going to start, and it's going to continue. Okay, so there is another war coming that is going to be a bigger war that is also going to happen in Asia that is going to play out kind of similarly to this, and it's going to be Vietnam. Okay, so all of this is kind of foreshadowing what is coming for a longer Cold War. And you guys have to keep in mind that the leadership and the American people, they don't know that the Cold War is going to last for another 40 years. They don't know that. They are hoping to finish it to get to a peaceful point. But we're going to see that things are going to just continue to escalate in some cases. Okay? So that is where we are going to stop with Korea. So you guys, if you did not finish the MacArthur telegram from I believe that was Wednesday. If you didn't finish that, that's what you need to do now. So the goal for me is that you have taken the Cold War Part 1 note, so where we kind of introduced the Cold War. You started the MacArthur telegram. Now you go and finish it, and you've taken the notes on the Korean War. If you've done all of those things, you are good for the week. You're done, and I hope you have a good weekend. If you finish this before Thursday, you still have to do the Google Meet. So don't forget Google Meet on Thursday. Okay? All right, thanks, guys.